Where did you go to school for design?
Well, I went to two schools. The first school I went to was called Russell Sage College in upstate New York, in Troy, New York. And I was actually a fine arts major. So the school I was studying visual and performing arts. And I actually went there to study art therapy, which at the time was a very new profession. And the program that I enrolled in was brand new. I was like one of the pilot group of the program, and it was not a good program at all yet because was trying to merge art and psychology together. And so I didn't stay in the program, but I stayed at the school. And so I have a bachelor's of fine arts, and I was an art major. I did a lot of work in galleries and museology, they called it. And I was a dance minor just for fun. And thus, as I tell the students many times, thus I got out of school and I was a bartender, right? Because I had no skill set. So when I went back to school for interior design, I went to Colorado State University. I moved there to Colorado to go to Colorado State University, and I took a 3-year master's program in interior design.
Do you have a story about the time you realized you wanted to be a designer?
When I graduated from Russell Sage from my bachelor's degree, I moved to California, and I was joking that thus I was a bartender. Actually, I got a job though I was a bartender, but I got a job in a golf course architecture firm, a famous golf course architect. And all of the designers that worked there were golfers, but they were landscape architects. So I did a lot of drafting with tools that they taught me to use. They taught me how to render. I sort of got involved in the design process of landscaping. And that's when my first exposure to really design thinking and design elements and principles, because it's all the same, whether it's architecture or landscape, it's all really pretty much the same principles. So I really loved it, but not golfing and not landscape design. So I decided that I needed to go back to school. I was going to take two forks in the road. Did I want to go for fashion design or interior design? Because by this time I'd smartened up and done some research. And I'm from a family of makers. I've known my whole life how to sew, knit, make baskets. We always were making things in my house. So I thought that those kinds of skills like textiles and things like that would be good for either one of those fields. So I chose interior design, but fashion highly influences interior design. But I chose interior design in retrospect. That was such a smart decision, I think, on my part, just because I think this field has so much opportunity versus fashion design. It's really extremely competitive, and there's not all these little interesting things that we get to do, as an interior designer. So that's when I knew and learned what design was, but I just needed to figure out how I wanted to be a designer.
When someone comes to your house for the first time and doesn't know you, would they be able to tell that a designer lives there?
This one makes me laugh because I think so, yes. But my husband and I have such opposite tastes. And my husband's very traditional, which would not be the way I would design my home if it was just my home. But we joke, his happy place would look like an English castle, right? And I'm much more casual, maybe transitional. And so I think that we've melded two types of styles. But I think our home has a lot of things that mean a lot to us. When I travel, every time I travel, I buy an original architectural sketch. So I've got lots of them, and they're all over. And then my husband likes ships and nautical, so we've got a lot of that. So it's just all of a blend. But I had a friend come here for the first time to our somewhat new house, and she said, when she walked, she's a designer, and when she walked in, she said, "It looks like a store." Because, I have a lot of things that are like trying to tell a story and just kind of fun, funky things, I think. So I think you could tell it was someone who had a sense of adventure, at least.
What's your favorite place in the whole world?
I have two favorite places in the world. Traveling wise would be Paris. I've That was the first place I ever went when I traveled. I remember I was 21 years old, and I got to go to Paris and London and Scotland when I was in school. And for something about Paris for me, I'm a little bit of a Francophile, I think they call it. I can't speak French. I'm terrible with languages, but I just am so attracted to the architecture, the fashion, the aesthetic, just everything about it. So that would be in the big picture, my favorite place. Um, in my daily life, my favorite place is in our home that we lived in now for 3 years. We redid the back room, so I guess you could call it a three-season room, but it's just a wall of three walls of windows, and that's my favorite place here because you just look out at the woods and the deer and the trees and the rain, and that's my favorite place here.
What's something about you that might surprise people?
I feel blessed to have led a really interesting life. So I want to say three things that people probably wouldn't know about me. One of them is funny because any other female in New Jersey that I say I'm a camper, they go, "You're a camper?" Like they can't believe I go camping. And I grew up camping. I love camping. We don't go as much as we used to, but I'm a camper. I'll get in a tent in a sleeping bag and not have a hair curler or whatever. Well, we know I don't need that, but so I love to camp. I used to own a hot air balloon when I lived in Colorado. So I did a lot of hot air ballooning for many years, which was exciting and different and very beautiful. And the other thing is my husband and I got married in a castle in Scotland 21 years ago, just the two of us in this really amazing ceremony that was just, I'll remember forever. So those are kind of three things about me I think that are people would never guess about me.
What advice do you have for today's interior design student?
Well, my number one thing always is to be curious. Just be curious about the world around you. Be curious about design because it's a process, and there's always, like you mentioned, fashion and interiors. Like there's so many things to be influenced by, and just kind of be curious about how you can come up with something unique or find your own voice as a designer. And then my other advice to anybody, but especially students and especially young people, is to travel, travel, travel. And that doesn't, if you can't afford yet to go leave the country, just even driving down on a road trip down to the south, it's different food, it's different architecture, it's everything. To me, traveling as a designer just makes you so much more in tune to the world around you. So that's part of curiosity as well too. I guess the students, I think about this a lot sometimes that, they come, they're new, they're just like taking their first steps forward. And I'm sure it's so intimidating and scary. And just to know that we're here to support them. We know we're asking a lot, come up with this creative idea now, that's scary to anybody. A blank piece of paper is scary to anybody, but it's a process. And I think that, I think they're just going to have to kind of learn to enjoy the ride. There's no right or wrong answers in what we do. Well, some there are, but in what we do, and just kind of embrace that and take a breath and take a pause and get involved in things. When I teach a portfolio class, it's less and less lately, but over the past couple of years, but sometimes their students have never even been to a ASID meeting or they've never even left the building, and it's too small of a design community in New Jersey not to get out there, take advantage of opportunities, network like crazy. The practitioners are so supportive and inclusive and really want you to get involved. So that would be a little bit of different kinds of advice, but just to get out there, just don't make your education within the Greenling building.